What's good with YouTube? It's your man, Cosplay Ray, and we're back with another episode of You Got It, We Are Epic Cosplay. And on this video, I'm going to be showing you a little bit more of the, I won't say, some of the final parts of my Black Lightning Season 3 cosplay build. And I just want to start off by saying, never be afraid to try something. Never be afraid to try something new. Never be afraid to try some new techniques or doubt yourself. You know, cosplay is all about fun and expressing yourself best way you can, you know, and just expressing your artistic love, you know, for a particular character or prop or something to that effect. So never be afraid to try something new. I remember when I first got into working with foam, I was really like intimidated by it, and I literally would just like stare at like the materials when I first got them. But just jump in there, and you know you'll do just fine. So right here, I'm basically trying to readjust the template that I made for the trap, or the trap armor that's going to go over your shoulders pretty much. So it took me a little while to get, you know, the shape right that I wanted. I usually have templates that I just, you know, kept to the side for certain parts, and that was one from an older build, but for this particular build I needed to modify it and trim it down a little bit. So once you got your template, then you just want to take your template and you want to put it onto your piece of foam. Now, it depends on what type of foam you use. The foam I'm using in this video right now is anti-fatigue floor matting, and it has a texture on the other side, which is, so I'm basically drawing on the bottom of this particular foam. Now, you can always get foam supplies from like a cosplay supply store. There are certain craft stores that are now carrying like foam that has like smooth texture on both sides, so you don't really ever have to worry about, you know, having to flip over your material. All you gotta do is draw it on your foam and just cut it out. And when cutting, you definitely want to make sure that you have a sharp X-Acto blade, or a blade sharpener, which will, you know, every so often you want to sharpen the edge of your blade, because this particular foam, for whatever reason, can dull a new blade very quickly. So you want to be careful on your blades. You could either get the blades that I use, which are like the X-Acto Z, and they have like a nice gold trim on them, and they seem to last a little bit longer, and they stay sharper a little bit longer than the regular X-Acto blades. But you could always get like a sharpening stone or something to that effect. That you're definitely going to need that to get nice clean cuts on your foam pieces. Now, when I say a nice clean cut, I mean you want a nice smooth surface on your edges. That way there's less sanding for you to have to do. If you use a blade that isn't as sharp, you'll notice it will start to almost drag and not cut the material, and so it will almost be like ripping it. And when you want to glue your pieces together, you don't want to try to glue two ripped pieces together, or, you know, tattered pieces together. You want to make sure that they're nice and smooth. That way you get a nice clean seam. And so basically I am here cutting out the second piece of the trap. My friend Sean Zhang would call it a trap strap, and you know what? He's pretty much right. So I'm basically just cutting out my two shapes, and eventually I'm going to have to go and heat those with my heat gun and put a little bit of shape into it, because obviously you just can't glue straight up pieces on like that. You want to make sure that it fits over your body, and that's the thing when you're working with foam. Your knife and your heat gun are going to be like really important. Obviously, the knife is going to be cutting out your pieces, and the heat gun is going to allow you to put enough heat into the material to put a shape into it. Now, as you can see, I heated up my piece, and I'm actually just kind of just using my hands, and I'm just going to kind of knead it and roll it to make sure that it gets that curve that I need to go over my shoulder area. And right now I'm just doing a test fit. Test fits are always important. You, especially when I'm working like this, because I don't have anyone to help me out. So I have to do everything pretty much on myself. So it's always best to cut, get your shape right, maybe tape it down onto your piece before you actually commit to gluing. Because once you glue it in place, that's it. Unless you have some like contact cement thinner, it's going to be very hard to get that contacted piece that you just glued together off. And speaking of glue, the glue of choice for cosplay nowadays is contact cement. There are a couple of different brands. There's DAP, and then there's Barge. Barge is, I've seen more people use Barge, but the DAP Weldwood is, I believe, more accessible, and you can get that from like Walmart or something like that. I believe in the painting section, and to me it works just as good. They even sell it in small, probably like 4 to 5 ounce bottles, and it has an applicator brush in it, so you could use that brush to, apply your contact cement to your pieces. And when I talk about gluing, for those who aren't familiar, if you use contact cement, it's basically a glue, almost like a rubber cement, that you're going to want to put onto both pieces that you want to glue together. Put a thin, like 2 thin coats. Let it dry. Put a thin coat. Let it dry for at least 5 minutes. I would say anywhere from 5 to 10. If you go too long, it might lose its tackiness. But you want to put a thin coat. In most cases, sometimes you could put a thin coat, and 1 coat will be enough. But sometimes you might need to put more than 1 coat. But I recommend put a thin coat, wait 5 minutes, then go back and put another thin coat. Then wait another 5 minutes. Now you need, as you can see in this shot right here, I'm putting it onto the piece that I want to glue together. So you're going to want to put it on both pieces that you want to glue together. So I'm putting it on the chest, that's the upper part of the chest, and then I'm going to put the other glue on the bottom of the trap. Like I said, wait 5 minutes, then you could put it together. Now you want to make sure you put it together carefully, because you want to minimize the seam. When I say the seam, obviously is the point where both pieces connect, and depending on if you want it staggered or not, that's up to you. But like, you just want to make sure that you have a nice flush seam on certain pieces. That way there's less sanding, and then there's less having to fill the seam in. Speaking of filling seams in, if you have seams that you need filling, people have been using DAP Quick Seal. It comes in like a red and white tube, almost looks like a toothpaste tube, and you can find that in the painting section at like Home Depot. And I think it's water based a little bit, and you just take a little bit of that, and you would actually rub it in or fill in like seams or gaps or something like that on your seams or holes of that nature, and use it like a wet fingertip and smooth it out, and then when it dries, you should be pretty good. I've seen most people fill in seams with that. I don't usually use it. I just, because it's cosplay, and if I feel the need to try to fill it in, I'll fill it in. But most points, I get the seam pretty decent where I don't need to use any of that. So right here, I'm actually doing my best to make sure that everything goes together smooth, as in the top surface. And that's where you're putting your pieces together. So you want those two top pieces to be as flush as possible, depending on what it is that you're making. For me, I wanted these pieces nice and smooth, so it almost looks like it was one continual piece instead of two pieces glued together. Now, contact cement, in my opinion, has basically replaced hot glue for assembling like foam pieces for the most part. When I first got started, I only knew of using hot glue, and so that's what I used. But hot glue can be messy. You could burn yourself. It takes longer to put the pieces together, and depending on your body temperature or what type of environment you're around, say if you're a person like me, I get hot really quick. So if you're like me and your body temperature goes high, your body temperature can actually soften hot glue. Unless you're using a high temp hot glue. Now maybe if you're using a high temperature hot glue, it might work out better. But I've used hot glue before, and I found that it would sometimes would just come apart because of my body heat. Or if you leave it in a warm car, could also like soften the hot glue. So here I'm basically putting the two trap straps onto the chest piece, and now this will allow me to actually kind of hook it over my shoulders to kind of get an idea of how I need the build to go from there. So from that point, it's all about trial and error, put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off. Mark where you need, and then go according to there. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and as I end all my videos, remember, hashtag I cosplay my way. And you can too, and you should too. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more videos. Thanks a lot. Be blessed.